Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of MINDTRIP, where we explore the connections between mindsets and mental health.
Yes, guys, welcome to a brand new, lovely week. For those of you who are in Pennsylvania, maybe you were surprised a little bit by that snow blizzard we had for a couple minutes there. But nonetheless, yes, thank you for tuning in this week again to our show. This month, we are focusing on the topic of anger, the role anger plays in our lives, and how to learn about forgiveness. We know that forgiving ourselves and forgiving other people can be a struggle. So we're going to continue on our mission to share with you guys different tips, different tricks on how to overcome that anger and start inviting forgiveness into your life.
Absolutely. You know, last week we focused a lot on pausing and breaking and digging deep into your primary emotions, because we know that anger is a secondary emotion and there's always something beneath that surface. And so this week we're going to really talk about displacement and projection and some of the different defense mechanisms we use for anger. So we can't wait. Do you want to get us started?
I do. So I noticed that we forgot to update our scripture. You know, this morning as we were talking, we kind of felt a different verse pull at our heartstrings. So we're changing it last minute. Sorry, guys, but I'm going to share that with you right now. It is, I can never say this, Ecclesiastes. I can't pronounce that. Chapter 7, verse 9. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger rests in the bosom of fools. When I think about that Bible verse, it just makes me think about what's happening in the world today, especially in our country here on Inauguration Day. Anger is an emotion that is taken over many people's lives. I know we have talked about it being a secondary emotion, but for how often we see it, it can look like a primary emotion, which is how we know it's spiraling out of control for many people.
Yeah, and you know, I wore this shirt today on purpose. I don't know if you can read it, but it says, "We rise by lifting others." And it's really true. When we have that lifting spirit and that kindness and that understanding, we rise ourselves mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And when we act on our anger, it really, like you said, it spirals us out of control.
My favorite part of that verse is just the bosom of fools. Like when I think about anger, sometimes just what it makes you do behaviorally and the things that come out of your mouth, sometimes very foolish.
Yeah, and you know, I think for me, when I think about like why do people seem foolish, like that impulsive behavior, you know, I think that it's so easy to be angry. Right? I think of a toddler who's like mad because they asked for chicken nuggets. I don't know if you ever saw that video. This little kid asked for chicken nuggets. Mom gave him chicken nuggets, and then he cried because he had chicken nuggets. Right? Like that overwhelming, like if you have kids at home, you know, they can just be mad over everything, right? They're sorting through their emotions. And so when I see people in real life being angry and yelling, I'm just like, have you not learned to manage your anger after all of your years of living? And so that's why to me it's foolish, because we're not looking deeper. We're not trying to understand why we're angry or trying to effectively communicate with others.
And I want to take it a step deeper. I know it's a natural emotion to become angry at things that when we don't get our way or what have you. But I just feel like it can also be selfish when you allow it to spiral out of control. Sometimes when you get really angry, you don't recognize that your words cut sharp like a knife. And you can really impact your loved ones. You can even impact strangers, for those who care about strangers. I know I do. But just when people just have difference of opinions and they get angry, they're not able to just sit there and like talk it out. It's my opinion, so it's fact, which is actually a cognitive thinking error, just seeing feelings as fact.
Yeah, and so the reason we want to talk about anger and the common defense mechanisms and give you guys tips on how to manage your anger is because it is, like you said, it is so common. So I want to read off some very boring but interesting statistics at the same time. More than 12% of people, when surveyed, said they have trouble controlling their own anger. More than 28% they say that they worry how angry they sometimes feel. And researchers found that almost 2% of adults in the United States with impulsive anger carry a gun. And so we know that this leads into antisocial behavior, domestic violence, workplace violence, looting, like, you know, just like all of these things that are really not only detrimental to the self, but to society as a whole.
What would you say if I told you that anger is a passion emotion?
Oh, Absolutely. Yeah.
Why?
I mean, why?
Putting her on the spot.
Do this every week.
You can put me on the spot, you know. I just beat her to the punch.
I think this is where my brain first jumps, but I think of like crimes of passion, right? When you become so emotionally involved in a situation or you're emotionally connected to a person and they feel like they betray you or distrust, that primary emotion, you become angry and you just act on impulse. You're so filled with passion about a topic or how you feel that you can't control your behavior.
I'm so happy that you mentioned that. So as I was kind of looking up some statistics on anger this morning, I found the next step above anger is aggression. And a lot of times when we react with anger or aggression, it's almost always towards somebody that we know, somebody that has a close personal relationship with us. Reminds me of the saying that you hurt those that you love the most.
Which I just think is a crap saying. Just my opinion. Not a statistical fact. But I think it's almost like that saying, boys will be boys.
Yeah.
What it does is give an excuse for bad behavior that we don't hold people accountable.
And that's so big.
And so the whole we hurt the ones we love the most. No, it's an excuse for bad behavior and we're not going to do that anymore. And I think it's holding ourselves accountable to how we behave and how we feel.
Absolutely. Anger is an emotion that will really spiral you out of control if you don't get a check on that. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Like just that saying, it's been passed down from generation to generation to generation. And now when there's a big blow up, maybe you come back together in a couple of days and apologize. I'm so sorry. They say you hurt the ones you love the most, but it takes away that accountability. It removes the self-blame. And I think it hinders forgiveness sometimes as well.
Absolutely. And so, when we become passionately angry, there's normally one of 4 defense mechanisms. I mean, there's a ton of defense mechanisms out there, but we find, especially with our clients, that there are common 4. And I know this is like, you really like to coach on this.
I love it.
So do you want to talk about one of the few?
Yeah, when I think about, so there's 12 common defense mechanisms, but to spare you guys on the time and the lengthiness that would be going into this, explaining all 12, we've narrowed it down to 4. First one is projection. And I know I have a definition of it, but I want to read the exact definition so that you guys can understand where we're coming from with this one.
And this is from the American Psychological Association.
Yes. Projection is referring to unconsciously taking unwanted emotions or traits that you don't like about yourself and attributing them to someone else. We project sometimes. There might be those characteristics or traits in ourselves that we don't like. We don't address it because we're not held accountable. Anger being one of those emotions, and we project that onto somebody else. Because it's so much easier to say, Nikki, I just get so upset that you don't know how to control your anger. Like, what are you doing? That's projection because I don't know how to control my anger.
Absolutely. Actually, I'm going to put you not on the spot. Do you see that blue book beside you? That little notepad on the table? Do you mind handing it to me? I literally...
Did you write notes on me, Nikki?
No. No. But
just keeping tabs of our friendship.
I had a coaching call. It was one that you couldn't take. And so we talked about projecting anger. And I literally just now thought about this. I'm so sorry. I should have had this ready. So what are some other examples in the meantime while I search for this? Yeah.
A huge example that I feel like everyone has heard before or can unfortunately relate to is cheating in a relationship. A lot of times we'll see one of the partners is being unfaithful, but it bothers them. They know it's not right. They know they're hurting their person that they're in a relationship with. They continue to do it, but instead of addressing it themselves and being open and honest and saying, hey, maybe I'm not feeling happy because, or maybe whatever the case is, they start pointing the finger back at you. Why? You should have been home at 5. It's 5:45. Where were you? Oh, let me see your phone really quick. Who's this person? Why do you keep sneaking off to take phone calls? And perhaps, it's likely that the other partner is not cheating, but when you are, or when that person is cheating in the relationship, they will start pointing the finger, projecting their insecurities onto you.
Absolutely. So sorry for all that rustling. And another big one. So when we think about judgment, I think about this kind of related to anger. Anytime we really passionately pass judgment onto someone else and have like a little bit feelings of like strong annoyance or anger, it always stems from a deficit in us. Now, I think the big thing is it doesn't have to be a mirror deficit. So for example, And this is like really digging deep into the emotions that I had written down here. This one person gets really angry when they see laziness. And she had said, but and I mentioned that. I said, you're projecting. I mean, it was just in everywhere and in everything. People that had nothing to do with her, was not impacting her life. And she's like, yeah, but I'm not lazy. That's not projecting. I said, okay. Well, we dug deeper. And long story short, this woman was not lazy at all. She was very, very busy, got a lot done.
Hard worker.
Yeah. But she tied her self-worth to her productivity. The more she got done, the better she felt about herself. The more relaxed or lazy she was, she felt horrible about herself. And so she, in that convoluted way, then projected her own feelings of inadequacy from being lazy onto other people if they're being lazy in her eyes. And so again, it doesn't always have to be, because I get angry because someone else is lazy. It doesn't mean you're lazy, but there's absolutely something deep within there that is tied to that.
So guys, if you could share with us in the comments below, what are some ways that maybe you project? What are some things that maybe you don't want to share this in the comments below, but think about it, write it down in a journal. What are some ways that maybe you don't like about yourself, some behaviors you don't like about yourself that you don't feel comfortable peeling back the layers and saying, I have a problem, but I'm going to point it out in other people. I think that's really good that you mentioned that. It doesn't necessarily have to be an exact characteristic, but what are some of your fears? What is something that is linked to for you? Like our client, she didn't like the laziness in other people because she feared people looking at her thinking she was the lazy one, thinking she was the one that would take the shortcuts when that wasn't her. And I remember you talking to me about that. It consumed her life and ended up being a real problem for her. She wasn't happy until we were able to dig deep and rip that label off of her.
Yeah, and the other examples I see a lot behaviorally. So anger doesn't mean always yelling or cursing or, it doesn't always have to be acts of outward physical aggression, right? Anger shows up in all kinds of ways. And so I think another big one I see is, especially online, is mom shaming or parent shaming. I think that's a way that we often see anger come out in just those passive aggressive or sometimes outright aggressive comments.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you said that. Judgment is huge when it comes to projection. It's so big. I always like to say, like, for every mom out there is a different parenting style. There's 4 common parenting styles. I'm not going to get into that because that's not the topic today. But for every single mom that's out there is a different parenting style. And just because somebody doesn't do exactly what you do with your kids doesn't mean that you got to pass judgment or be mean or project those feelings onto them.
I mean, and I'm thinking like the dumbest example. I don't know why this is what came into my head, but like even you and I, we are similar in almost every single way imaginable. Not only similar personality wise, but like our lives and our characteristics have almost aligned perfectly. And we have German Shepherd puppies.
I was just about to say. Both have German Shepherd puppies. Yeah.
And we don't raise those the same.
No, we don't.
At all.
No.
Like we have 2 very different styles on that, and both dogs are turning out fine. And if
that's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
And when you ask my opinion, I'll give you like, well, this is what we did with Mazaki.
Yeah.
But if you don't ask, I generally don't volunteer because I'm like, it's your dog, you do you. And I'm sure you do the same with me.
I'm so glad because I was actually surprised today. So Mazakine is a well-behaved dog, but for some reason today she smelled the chili that I had when I walked in. She's jumping all up on me. She's not sitting down. Never heard her yell at her dog before, but at the top of her lungs, Mazakine, get down. The dog's like, huh?
Yeah, I'm not a big yeller.
I know that I will yell at Kobe because that's how he reacts, and he'll just like sit down, he'll stop his behavior. But I was like, whoa, you don't usually yell.
Meanwhile, I'm on Zoom with her and she's screaming at her dog all day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm hearing it echo. I'm like, can you stop?
Right.
Yeah, and like you said, she normally doesn't. But yeah, I mean, so we have very different parenting styles, and again, both our dogs turn out fine.
Right.
At least so far.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big one, and I know when it comes back to like parenting, a lot of people judge because, I don't want to say it's an excuse, but kind of. But I will hear, especially moms say, well, I just love my kids so much, and I just want to be the best mom, and I want all kids to, have the best parents. So I'm placing my opinion elsewhere. Like, no one asked. And I think it's almost this culture of having our opinions so accessible online, whereas before we'd have to pick up the phone and actually have interactions with people. Now we can talk to strangers so easily that we think it's okay or that everyone wants our opinion, and they don't, really. And I think the problem is when we're frustrated or we're unhappy or we're overwhelmed with something at home, then we'll just like go online and troll people. And I hate saying that.
Perfect segue into the next defense mechanism. Just wanted to do a shout out. Hi, Mildred. We're happy to see you back this week. We love that you tune in every Wednesday. Please, if there's anything that you feel like you want to share with us in the comments below, we'd love to address some of that for you. Maybe do it on the spot coaching too for everybody to see. Maybe we can put you on the spot like I put Nikki on the spot.
Yeah.
But jumping back in, what you just said, sometimes we get angry at other things and then we'll go online and troll other people. That flows into another defense mechanism called displacement. So let me go ahead and give you guys the APA definition for that. Displacement is a defense mechanism in which a person redirects a negative emotion from its original source to a less threatening recipient. A classic example of the defense mechanism is displaced aggression. Anger falls so perfectly into this defense mechanism.
Yeah, I hate this example. It's just the only one I can think of because it's very, very old. And I think I remember my grandmother telling it to me, which dates the age of it. But it said, like the boss yells at the employee. So let's say the dad comes home and yells at the wife yells at the kid kicks the dog.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Yes. And so, but it kind of, like, we see that, especially when we work with disadvantaged youth of, so much was happening in society and there's systemic racism and issues with poverty, put so much stress on the adults. They yell at their kids and the kids will take it out on animals or younger siblings. And it's just passing it down to someone who can't fight back. Basically.
Yeah. When I think about displacement and anger, I like to think about in relationships. Because again, and I know Nikki hates this saying, but I'm going to say it. You hurt those that you love the most. When you come home from work, normally the first person you see is going to be the first person to get the wrath or the anger or whatever happened in your day outside. So a perfect example, I'm gonna throw my husband under the bus with this one. So yes, we have a German Shepherd puppy. We've lived in our house for 3 years, but they just recently switched new management and they said German Shepherds are a banned breed. So he's talking to the leasing manager and she's like, I don't know if you guys can keep him. You may have to move. Let me, send it up and see what I can do for you guys. So he comes home pretty angry, pretty upset. Almost immediately, he's on his phone looking for other places to move to. I'm like, just relax and chill. Like, I know the leasing manager. We had him before they came in and took over. Like, we're good. Like, we can fight this if it's a thing. For him, it just kind of spiraled. He was yelling at me. Why didn't you start dinner yet? What this, that? And did you take Kobe out yet? I'm like, you're mad because we might have to move. Don't take that out on me. He was displacing his anger. He was upset at that situation. But I feel like in the moment, because it was such a passion for him, he was just letting his anger flow. And I was the one who was getting it because he was the first one. I was the first one he saw.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, so we will not go into this skill again. But in previous episodes, we talked about I statements, right? And like really understanding, and it kind of goes into what we talked about last week, like understanding why you're angry. And so I know anytime I'm mad at Sean, for those of you, I'm guessing probably no one here watching, but for those of you who know Sean, he's like the most laid back, even keeled, always has the same emotion, which is just like happy and relaxed. Like the most stressful thing in his life is like if he loses a softball game. I mean, the man has.
I can't believe when he said that, I was like, wow.
Must be nice. But yeah, like, so he's just very, very calm all the time. So he rarely does anything like for me to be mad at legitimately. So if I'm mad at him, I know it's probably a personal issue with me. So every time I'm mad at him, like, and I think he like rolls his eyes now, but I'm like, Sean, I feel mad because I feel insecure with blah, 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 blah. And he's like, okay. Like, but I mean, because I know if I'm mad, like, what's the real issue? He probably did nothing to make me angry because he's like so innocent. So it's probably like my own issue. Like, I feel like I didn't have enough time that week, or I'm feeling needy, which is fine. Like, we all feel that and it's okay. So I know I've really gotten the habit of that in this relationship of like, anytime I'm mad, to dig deep and understand why. But I look around and I see most people not in that habit at all.
Yeah. Clearly, like, let's look what's happening in the world. Like, again, I'm going to tie it back to difference in opinions, whether it is politics or where to go out to eat, something as simple as that. Sometimes it can create anger in us and we just take it out on other people that weren't even the initial source to begin with. And referring back to the definition, where it says taking it out on a less threatening recipient, just think about that. Sometimes when you get in a fight with a spouse or a partner, I don't want to say it's threatening, but you gotta be careful what you say to them. So it might be easier to just go home and like yell at the dog instead, less threatening, right?
Oh, Mildred, you asked us. Yes, I was listening.
Go ahead.
What is the best way to approach a parent that is belittling and cursing a child in public? So again, I find that I would never belittle or curse a child in public. But I find that I have to, because everywhere I go, especially being in the field like I'm in, I see what I think are like parent faux pas all the time. And I find that I rarely honestly say anything because it tends to escalate. And then what we have to remember is if we make that adult angry, they're more likely to go home and take it out on their kids. Right. And so personally, I think that if you really had to say something, I just go over and like have a conversation like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, hey, little buddy. And then like, I just try to like, not even talk to the parent about their parenting or the child, just like, how's your day going? Or, stressful having kids, isn't it? And like make a joke of it. Because again, it's really not our job to tell people how to raise their parents unless you're in a program or something designed for that.
Yeah. I know sometimes I might go over if it's out of control, which I don't really make a habit of it either, but just asking, hey guys, is there anything that I can help with? Because sometimes I will see a child out that suffers from autism or behavior disorder, and like everybody's just staring, while probably the parents feeling really embarrassed. But like you said, with our backgrounds, and I used to be a behavior support staff, so I know how to de-escalate behaviors. I'll help with that sometimes.
Yeah.
And they end up actually feeling very happy that somebody reached out and helped. But it's kind of a situation where you have to weigh the pros and cons. Some people may welcome you with open arms, but what if they start to displace the anger they had on their child onto you, and it escalates to something worse?
Yeah.
So you kind of got to weigh that.
And like you said, I like how you liked that address. So like you ask, hey, do you need help with anything? Like I said, I'll talk about the weather. We're not actually talking about like them belittling or cursing, because again, like what you see as cursing is really bad, obviously, right? But so I think from our point of view, so with us being behavior analysts in the past, so we have even more things that we're attuned to. So something that could be average for a person, we're like, you shouldn't do that. Like, you should give positive reward consequence, right? Like things that are really detailed. So I think everyone in their experience has their own level of what's right and what's not okay. And we have to be really careful talking to other people about that unless they want to.
Yeah.
Unless it's abuse, and that's a different.
Right.
But sadly, I mean, belittling a person is not really, it's not going to be a child line abuse incident usually.
Yeah. And depending on what happens, see, we're just opening up so many different chapters with this one. But depending on what happens, it could be filed under emotional abuse. I mean, the name calling, the belittling, things you see like that. So, but when you look behind all that, I feel like anger, and like you said, that passionate emotion of anger and aggression fuels that stuff that we see. It fuels how I don't want to say we, because not all of us, but it fuels how we talk to people. It causes us to literally, going back to the Bible verse, be a fool. Like your anger is showing your impulsivity when you act like that in public, and you belittle people and you're cursing and you're just acting a complete fool.
Absolutely. Mildred, I love that you asked that question. Because like you said, in other ways, when people get angry, we want to save the day. And that's natural. But the problem is, again, if someone's already angry and then they feel like we're judging them or we made it worse, chances are they won't take it out on us. They'll just go home and take it out on their kids even more. And so like, it's just, that's why I hate walking that fine line, but I really, really hesitate because chances are they'll just displace it even more. And it's really sad.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we covered displacement and we covered projection. Here's another one that many people like to avoid: denial.
Oh my gosh, this is the hardest one too.
What's that saying? Denial is not only a river in Egypt. Is that what it is? No, denial is a big problem for so many people. You've never heard that before?
No.
You've never heard that before? You've never heard that before?
No.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure some of you listening may have heard that before. Denial is not only a river in Egypt. But let me give you the textbook definition for that. It's a defense mechanism proposed by Anna Freud, which is apparently Sigmund Freud's daughter.
I think.
Or related to him in some way. But it involves a refusal to accept reality, thus blocking eternal events from awareness. If a situation is just too much to handle, the person may respond by refusing to perceive it or denying that it completely exists. I want to say in the years that I've been doing, we've been doing therapy, especially trauma work, denial is huge. Many people go through different types of abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse. There's so many different types. But when we don't allow ourselves to heal from that, sometimes that anger emotion can really, really, really take control and cause some pretty bad behaviors as a result of that. But nonetheless, when we try to at first point that out and highlight some of those behaviors that our clients are doing, they deny it. They just straight up, no,
I don't have a problem.
I don't have a problem with that.
So I love that you pointed that out, because you said like behaviors tell us if someone's angry. I know like when we do substance abuse, like that kind of like substance recovery, there's a saying that like our actions will always tell us how we feel, because our feelings will lie to us.
Similar to actions speak louder than words?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we may be feeling good, but if we're acting badly, if we're yelling more, if our sleep schedule is off, if we're indulging in addiction more, it's telling us we're not okay. Our feelings may be telling us we're okay, but our behaviors are telling us we're not. On the flip side, you may be feeling really awful, depressed, anxious, but you're keeping your job and you're being positive, and okay, you may feel horrible, but your behaviors are telling you that you're on the right track. And so I think this is a great example with anger, because how can you know something if you're in denial? But it's really like, if I think of like the classic example of like when we used to like work with kids, they'd like scream at us and be like, "I'm not mad." I'm like, okay, but you're yelling, so obviously you are. Your behavior will always indicate if you're actually angry or not.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I have to bring up the time when we were babysitting little boy, and he the perfect example of anger and saying that he wasn't. But anyway, so upset, like it was time for him to eat lunch, and it was macaroni. Who doesn't love macaroni? I love macaroni. And we gave it to him, and he just, I just want to nap. I was like, well, you got to eat your food first, and then you can nap. He's screaming at us. I'm like, you're angry, buddy. Like, it's okay. I'm not angry. I just want to nap.
Really? We gave him a nap at that point.
He chose a nap over macaroni, which, I mean, it would be difficult for me to choose between those two as well. Not going to lie.
I would eat in bed if I had a choice. But he was 3, did not have that choice.
Exactly. But anyway, guys, denial is just, it's big. Sometimes when we deny and we avoid talking about something, it can make us feel better in the moment. But I think that only deepens the cognitive distortions that we have. When we start to skew what anger actually is or how it actually impacts us, the thoughts we tell ourselves, we're going to really, truly in our hearts and minds feel like, oh, my anger is not a problem if you continue to deny it.
Yeah, and so I think more obvious ways, so obviously we gave the greatest examples we could of like obvious anger. But I think in other ways it shows up more realistically probably is, I think passing judgment is the biggest one. If you find yourself and like as humans, yes, we all pass judgment. But I can tell you like my judgment rarely comes out unless it's something egregious. And I'm like, cool. And even then, like I'm trying to find the noble intent. Like you said about how can I help you to that woman? Like, yeah, like that's why I'm like, oh my God, this poor woman's so overwhelmed. She's screaming at a toddler. Like, ugh, poor lady, like she must really have a crappy life. Like I don't even, so even my judgment then is mild. But if you find yourself passing judgment a lot, that is a huge indicator of anger. If you find yourself becoming really annoyed with the people you live with for like stupid things, and like we know what stupid things are, there's an anger issue that you're not addressing. You know, if like leaving the cup out is a big thing that like, it's just like that one thing, overall you have a healthy relationship, but like that one thing is really making you angry, we should probably look into other things that are really causing that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I feel like we could talk about denial all day long. It is a really big defense mechanism that people use to make themselves feel better. But I challenge anyone who struggles with shining a light on their own selves to remove that denial from your life. And I think you'll start to see some of the things that are really impacting you and start to really get some true change and healing from that.
Yeah, and like we have to remember, one, like it's natural for us to be angry, so we're not passing judgment. Like Lord knows I've been plenty angry in my day and time. I used to be a real hothead, so I get it. And then 2, you know, I think the only way, like the truth will set you free, and that corny saying, but it's really true by facing your truth and by not lying and not denying and just being honest. Like, what are my behaviors telling me? It can do nothing but help you and help you become a better person.
Right. feel like we're full of just random sayings. Like we're just
I know. We're
pulling
the quote queens.
the quote queens. I like that. Can we add that to our tagline? Bryant Katsaounis, executive coaching for leaders, the quote queens.
I don't think people would pay us just to give them like quotes. So.
Whatever. I would. All right, guys. The fourth, but not the least, is rationalization. Wow, this one, I see this happening all the time. Textbook definition is an attempt to logically justify immoral, deviant, or generally unacceptable behavior. So since we are focusing on anger, let's pretend we see somebody flipping out, just going crazy. Maybe they're belittling somebody, cursing at somebody, going up to them saying, "Hey, bro, like, are you okay? What's happening? You really have a problem with anger right now. Let's calm down." Well, I'm just mad because, you know, the bank overcharged me and now I have a negative in my account. That's rationalizing. You're trying to describe off your immoral behaviors or just generally unacceptable. It's never acceptable to, you know, blow up like that, but then you try to rationalize and make sense of it.
I think this is the most common one, and it's the one we think about the least. Your anger is your behavior and your problem. And I think the biggest thing we hear, you know, it doesn't matter what someone does to you. Having angry behavior is not a refined, graceful, appropriate response generally. And I know that sounds kind of judgmental, but our whole point of this, and I think of being God-fearing people, is that we try to act with grace, right, when we can. And so I think about like, you know, where this person cut me off, or this person, okay, even if it's something crazy, set my house on fire situation, and you have a right to feel frustrated and angry, but like to be angry at that person, are you really angry at that person? Are you angry because you feel loss and grief? You feel scared. You know, there's like other feelings that, again, like I'm not saying it's not a right to be angry, but when you act in your anger, it literally does not do any good. It does not serve any purpose except deteriorate your own mental and physical health. So if we can kind of bypass that anger and say, man, I feel sad, I'm frustrated, I'm scared, you know, then we can address those emotions and take the steps towards healing, and you don't stay stuck in that negative spiral.
I agree with that. Hence the reason why our series is called Forgive Me Not, right? We want to kind of help you guys figure out how to bypass all that and just get straight to the healing and forgiveness. Rewinding just a little bit, I want to share with you guys, I don't know if you saw a common theme, but denial and rationalization can go hand in hand. When we deny things, we might rationalize why. Well, yeah, I know I have a problem with drinking alcohol, but I just had such a long day. I need this. Just it tries to explain that off.
Yeah, and I even think back to like when we're really angry. And again, we all get angry. Taylor gets angry. I get angry. So when we say this, like we're not saying we're perfect and you should, like, we're human. We're just trying to like be better humans.
Yeah.
Right. But I think like the whole, like, if someone's really mad because let's say a partner cheated, you know, are you mad or are you feeling betrayed? Are you feeling hurt? Are you feeling a loss of the future you had planned? And so again, bypassing anger, like having anger, again, deteriorates mental and physical health, and then just takes it longer to heal because you need to get to those primary emotions before you can heal. But the thing is, anger is such, I like how you mentioned passionate earlier. We like to feel passionate and that adrenaline rush. So when we feel anger, we don't want to let go of that. We don't want to work on that grieving. Like, that's not as fun. Like, we don't want to go to the sad place.
Right.
Like, let's stay mad. Let's mess stuff up. And so, I mean, it's really easy for some people to get stuck in that anger cycle, and it will absolutely destroy your life.
Yes. So while defense mechanisms, why people use them to protect themselves from getting hurt or harm or whatever the protection reason is, remember, guys, that it distorts your reality. It takes you further from what the true issue is. And again, circling back to that Bible verse, it can make you look like a fool.
Yeah, and you know what? There's one more, so I know this was unplanned. There's one of my favorite.
She's got a lot of unplanned stuff today.
I know. And it was kind of like, as we were talking, reminded me of this. But it's Colossians chapter 4, verse 6. And it says, let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, so that you know how you ought to answer every man.
Ooh.
And I just think that is such a great, always with grace. Like, we can feel things. It's okay to feel angry.
Yeah.
We have all of these primary emotions, but to speak with grace, because everyone deserves that.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good takeaway.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Another takeaway for you guys is, like Nikki shared earlier, you might be in denial about your true feelings, but look to your behaviors to get some information or some insight onto how you're really truly feeling.
Absolutely.
So guys, there was one more thing we wanted to bring to you. We have a closing Bible verse. Should we jump into that?
Sure.
Okay. We have a closing Bible verse, and it's Proverbs 29, chapter 11. A fool utters all his mind, but a wise man keeps it in till afterwards. So absolutely love this Bible verse just because it's going to lead us into our next point of conversation with you guys. And that's, how can you manage some of those defense mechanisms? How can you manage that anger? So what is another skill that we could give today?
Absolutely. So I think if you're really feeling frustrated in that moment, there's something called grounding. We use it a lot in therapy and coaching. So I always give this analogy of, for those of you who are old enough to remember, there's a movie called Twister in the early 90s. And there's a scene where like the tornado's coming and there's a cow flying past the screen and like, all of this debris. It's like, move, right? Yes. Okay. So I think like when we get angry, our brain just turns into this whirlwind of emotion and feeling. And grounding is literally being able to, like, I think, place your feet in the ground and be solid and still and thoughtful no matter what chaos is happening around you. So I was thinking the grounding technique of the 5 senses, but you can
love that one. Okay. Love that one.
So I'll let you give the 5 senses, but as a real quick background, psychologically, the more senses we use, the more our brain is able to use the frontal lobe, which is the executive thinking, the processing, the higher order thinking skills, right? It's not the back of your brain is what acts on impulse. It's what little kids use, that we think of like the caveman brain. The front of your brain is supposed to be the evolved, graceful part of your brain, right? And so the more our senses are activated and the more they're activated at one time, the more we're able to use that front part. So the 5 sense grounding activity literally activates all of your senses in a short period of time so that you're able to think more logically.
So let's say that you're super upset, you're super angry, your boss made you upset. So I feel like this grounding technique can kind of fit into the pause and break that we brought you guys last week. Find somewhere, a room that you can just go sit in and just break and do this grounding technique. So again, the 5 senses, and you might have to correct me on the order, but you want to point out 5 things you could see.
Touch.
5 things isn't it 5 things you could see?
Oh, now we just messed it up. I don't know.
All right, so we're going to go through the senses, but you get
maybe it is see. I'm sorry. She's right.
Okay, so 5 things you can see. So as I'm sitting in this room now, I see a painting. I see a sign that says it's a good day to have a good day, because it's true. I see flowers. I see our laptop in front of us, and I see our cups of water with Mio in it to flavor water. So what's next?
Now it's
4 things you can touch.
4 things you can touch.
So then it's 4 things you can touch. I can touch this piece of paper. I can touch this pen. I can touch Nikki's watch. I can touch my bracelet.
And, when we're looking at, like, especially with the touch, like, think about how the things feel. Like,
yes.
This is smooth. This is cold. Like, really, like, use your senses.
Absolutely. 3 things you can... See, I always get stuck after this. 3 things you can hear. Yes, 3 things you can hear. So I can hear the wind outside. I can hear the motor on this computer. Can I hear anything? I can hear your heat coming through the vents. I can hear that. 2 things. No, there's 1 thing you can taste. What's the other sense?
Smell.
2 things you could smell. I smell your potpourri.
Ooh.
Or your incense.
Incense.
I smell your incense. Okay. I can't really smell anything else, but I'm going to say for the sake of this activity, I can smell freshly printed paper.
I can never smell anything. Like, my nose is perpetually, like, I have what we refer to in Pennsylvania as the Susquehanna drip. Like, I just always have sinusy stuff. So we're lucky if I can smell anything at all. So I never make the 2.
Yeah. Normally it's 1, but yeah. And then 1 thing you can taste. So if you take a break, you can go grab a glass of water. If you're chewing gum, maybe you taste the flavor of your gum.
I think the great thing about taste too is, like, if I haven't eaten or drank in a while, there is no taste, but then that alerts me, I should probably get a drink. Like, I need to take care of my physical self. So that's the other thing those 5 senses can do, is, like, really alert you to your person and see if there's something your body was telling you that you've just been ignoring.
Right.
I know for me, when I start to do this activity, a lot of times I realize, like, I haven't gone to the bathroom in a while and I need to pee. Like, right now, it's an emergency. But I, like, put it off because I was so busy, I didn't pay attention to that. And I know, for those of you who work, like, that happens frequently, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So the 5 senses really allows you to be in touch with yourself and calm you down in that moment.
That's why I absolutely love that one. You know, when we first bring this up to many of our coaching or therapy clients are like, why do I want to do that? Because literally it takes your mind off of what you're angry about. It allows you to recenter yourself and give your full self into focusing on the things around you and your environment. And then once you are in that calm state, like she just shared with you guys, once you are in that calm state, you might be able to look at things from a rational point of mind and return back to problem solve.
So because I botched that up earlier, thanks for not being angry.
I'm so angry.
5 things you can touch, 4 things you can see, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste.
Love it. Love it. All right, guys. If you guys have done anything in your past that kind of helps you calm down or reground yourself, absolutely share that with us. We'd like to know what has worked for you so that we can take that information and share it with some of our other clients that we work with. I did want to share one more grounding tool, and this is very, very difficult, but if you like math, sometimes this is a common one, but
do you like that?
No, it doesn't work for me, but it works for some of the boys that, you know, I do therapy with. Counting back from 100 by 3 or by 7. It's easy to do it by 5, but when you challenge your mind, it kind of, you have to be focused on that. Like, okay, 100, 93. I would get stuck after that because I don't know what 93 minus 7 is off the top of my head.
There you go.
Yeah.
So before I give the closing prayer, there is an event going on next Saturday. Would you like to talk about that?
Absolutely, guys. So this Saturday, January 23rd, is the God's Army event. It will be live on the She Is Still Dope network at 11 a.m. That means you can find it on sheisstilldope.tv, which is the YouTube. You can find it live on Facebook and any other platform that She Is Still Dope is on.
Yeah, and we're also sending out newsletters once a week this week, kind of talking about this topic. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe at www.visiondrivencoaching.com. And be sure to be really careful when you enter your email address. I know lately we've had a lot of subscribers and it's coming back as mail delivery failure. So you might have typed it in wrong. So be careful when you do that.
Yes. Please also follow us on our social media pages. Bryant and Katsaounis Life Coaching will be found on Facebook. And then our Instagram is BKLLC19.
Yep, and also same for Twitter.
Same for Twitter. I always forget we have a Twitter.
That's because I'm usually the one that posts on it. Yeah.
All right, guys. So let's close in prayer.
Okay.
Would you like to do it or would I like to do it?
Do you want to do it this week? I did it last week.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Dear God, please allow us to sit back and reflect what's in our hearts. Sometimes anger can run rampant and run unchecked, and we start acting in ways that you frown down upon. Please help us be able to shine light on that and understand that it's okay, and now it's time to heal and move forward. Anger no longer has an impact or a hold on our lives, Lord. We no longer hold on to behaviors that cause foolishness. We want to be holy in all the ways and live how you have intended us to live, Lord. Please let us see that light. Please work with us day in and day out to be delivered from our anger. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys. As always, thank you so much for tuning in to MINDTRIP, where we continue to explore the connections between mindsets and mental health. We will see you next Wednesday at 2 p.m. as we close with forgiveness.
Bye.
Have a